Now you can believe that you can go into a state of mind where you can identify all the skills you need for the healing of all past, present and future relationships, and the creation of more peace and harmony in your life. Now if you want something to change, then you have to change something, and believe that you have to take personal responsibility for your own future. And ironically, you may have to be open to the idea of changing some of your beliefs. And if you would like to believe that it is true that you can heal your own relationships and your life, I'd invite you to listen carefully to the advice of genuine experts. Suspend your disbeliefs and consider with an open mind everything that is said in its entirety. Now I could tell you to heal your relationships as if it was some simple thing to do, and insult your intelligence, or possibly lower your self-esteem as well. Or I could suggest to you that before you can heal your relationships, perhaps you need to heal yourself, or at least that part of you that manages relationships. Now it is very important that in order to maintain any healthy relationship, people need to spend some time on regular occasions doing things which are intended to make other people happy, as long as doing this doesn't compromise their own happiness. And one of the benefits is that seeing someone you care for being happy tends to make you happy. And another benefit is that people tend to reciprocate and do things that make you happy. Now, if happy people spend much time feeling grateful for what they have, and if unhappy people spend much time feeling resentful for what they don't have, what will you choose to focus on? And it turns out that at any point in time, people are about as happy as they choose to be. And smiling is a trigger for lifting the spirits. And if you want someone to feel better about themselves and about you, then a simple thing that can be very helpful is to smile. It can be catching. Now, human beings have evolved or been created, depending on your belief system, to survive and even thrive in their own countries, states, communities, tribes, and groups of all sizes, and most importantly, family groups, both small and extended. And these groups support their members, whether weak, strong, healthy, or sick, and no matter what their skill level or ability. And in return for these benefits, it is considered fair and reasonable that each and every member of any community or family contribute, according to their ability, towards the health, comfort, happiness, and prosperity of their group. Everyone plays their part, and those who try to freeload on the efforts of others are quickly brought into line and made aware that with the benefits they enjoy, there is a responsibility to pull their weight. And teaching this valuable life lesson in the first and most important instance is the responsibility of the older generation. And learning this lesson well is the responsibility of the younger generation, who will one day need to understand it so they can step straight into a harmonious relationship when they eventually leave home and form their own new family group and be well placed to pass it on to their own children. So countries, groups, and families need to formulate rules and codes of behaviour that everyone accepts and understands. And there even needs to be ways for ensuring that the rules are followed, and to make sure that everyone contributes and benefits fairly, and that antisocial behaviour is dealt with fairly. Now, individual family rules can vary considerably and still be quite effective. For example, a child may get pocket money or an allowance and be expected to help out with certain family chores on a routine basis, designed to teach the lesson that with rights there are responsibilities. Or the two things may be considered separate, and the lesson could instead be that helping others is the right thing to do. And there are many ways to learn something, which sometimes suggest themselves if you are paying attention. And sometimes these serendipitous learnings can be exactly what you need. Now, even generic family rules can be arbitrary, but some examples could be: 1. Be sociable. 2. Be calm. 3. Be considerate. 4. Be friendly. 5. Be courteous. 6. Be kind. 7. Be respectful. 8. Be self-confident. 9. Be diligent. 10. Contribute fairly. And all family members should be encouraged to apply their best endeavours to everything they do, and be made aware that the others around them care about them, and be encouraged to deal with their own personal issues with the help of the family and all other resources available, and in return do this in a way that is considerate of others. Now, you can demean a person's efforts, or you can encourage them by praising their achievements, both past and present, providing them with a feeling that they have a good reputation for achieving what they want, and an expectation that they can and will see a reward for their efforts, now and in the future. Now, people or family members who are handicapped in some way due to illness or for whatever reason need to be supported and given special consideration, but they should never allow themselves, or be allowed by others, to use this as an excuse to contribute less than they reasonably can, or do less than what is fair under the circumstances. And it is the family itself that must decide exactly what is fair and reasonable, and how this may vary occasionally, depending on how the health and ability of each of its members is at any particular point in time. And you can view so-called dysfunctional behaviour as an inconvenience to others, or as something that makes others uncomfortable and concerned. Or you can view it as a normal reaction to an abnormal situation, and so-called dysfunctional behaviour in people, or superstitious behaviour, or obsessive behaviour, or compulsive behaviour, or phobias, or self-harm, or eating disorders, or alcohol or drug disorders, or panic attacks, or various other seemingly irrational or disruptive or antisocial behaviours can be viewed as simply symptoms and understandable reactions to situations of anxiety, stress or depression, whether real or as perceived by those people, or viewed as a perceived hostile environment, whether past, present or future by those so-called dysfunctional people. Or you can make a list of what traits someone has that annoy you, or a list of what desirable traits are missing in that person. Or you can put yourself in their shoes and make a list of things that can justify their annoying traits, or reason why desirable traits that seem to be missing are not evident, or at least evident when they need to be. Or you can reframe abnormal behaviour in yourself or someone else as normal behaviour in an abnormal situation. Or you can reframe life as a character test. Or you can come to the conclusion that everything that everyone does is normal. All people are inherently normal in any circumstance, even though circumstances are constantly changing, and we can actually be in control of our own behaviour, and we can take full responsibility for how we act and feel. And if you are unwell and feel you cannot pull your normal weight, and you feel you need most of your spare energy to heal yourself, then it is only fair to yourself and others that you do exactly that. Use your energy positively and to the best of your ability to get yourself well. And you can trust and believe that those who care about you are hoping you will achieve that, because the united goal of families is for all its members to be happy and healthy. And how we feel can depend on and be influenced by how we act. And so it is very important to act in a way that makes both others and ourselves happy. Now you can just say, "Hey you," or use some other generic ways of referring to someone when you are talking to them. Or you can make them feel important and use their name in a respectful way. Or you can give instructions or requests or comments in an offhand manner. Or you can begin with praise for their efforts, achievements, or improvements, and show an honest appreciation of them on every opportunity, no matter how big or small, and create an atmosphere of mutual admiration, trust, and cooperation. Or you can try to lay down the law and give orders. Or you can avoid misinterpretations of you wanting to unreasonably control other people and ask others what they think should be done. And making an honest and genuine attempt to see things from the other person's point of view, or sympathizing with their wishes or ideas, will always help a relationship. And you can claim an idea that comes up in conversation as your own. Or you can put your ego aside and give the other person credit for an idea, and give their ego a boost. Help them improve their self-esteem. Or you can dominate a conversation talking about yourself and casting your pearls of wisdom and annoy everyone. Or you can talk about things you know the other person is interested in or agrees with you on, and then let them talk about things that they want to talk about, and take a genuine interest, and listen without interrupting, and perhaps be surprised later on when they say you are a very interesting person, even though they did all the talking. Now, if you want to influence someone, you can try to ram your point home. Or you can reframe your suggestions in the context of how they can get something that they particularly want, or will make them happy, or how the suggestions are for the greater good of everyone. Or you can highlight the exciting benefits. Or you can ask for their support in achieving a noble objective. Now you can give direct criticism, or you can talk to someone about all their faults and make a big deal of it, which can be very confronting to most people. Or you can eat humble pie and talk about your own mistakes, provide an indirect message, and let the other person save face, and make your point with humility instead of arrogance. Or you can make an effort to help them break up their faults into tiny pieces that are easy to correct, and help them make that job seem much less daunting for them. Now it's great to have tools, but if you don't use them regularly, they get rusty. And if you don't already have all the tools you need to heal yourself and your relationships, be open to acquiring them. And you can definitely learn those new skills and abilities quickly and easily. And you have the permission of everyone who cares for you to do that. Or you can give yourself the permission you need to heal yourself and your relationships. And there are many real-life examples all around you, every day, of lessons that can teach you what you need to know to do that, to heal yourself and your relationships. And that reminds me of a story about a man who grew up on a very shady side of town, doing a very dubious job, and who, not surprisingly, believed that all cops were corrupt. And that was because both he and all those he hung around with had countless stories of police corruption that went all the way to the top, and no stories about police that refused bribes to look the other way. And that proved to him that his belief was true beyond doubt. Now, after a while, the man's circumstances changed, and he decided to go straight and live an honest and productive life. And he joined the police force, which changed his perspective. And he came to the conclusion that there were probably plenty of other honest cops out there. Which reminds me of a story about a woman known as the African Violet Queen, who lived alone in a country town. Now this woman was quite wealthy, but was suffering from severe depression and low self-esteem, for no obvious good reason, and her only hobby, at which she was very good, was growing and propagating a few, but very beautiful African violets, which were very striking. And one day she was challenged to put her skill to good use by buying a large number of pots and growing several hundred plants and delivering them personally to those people in the community who were having milestone events like births, deaths, marriages, anniversaries, and birthdays. And she did that. And before long she was famous and much loved and appreciated, and affectionately known as the African Violet Queen. And she felt important and useful, and her depression quickly became a thing of the past. And that reminds me of a story about a man who had unfounded feelings of guilt and debilitating depression after his wife died in a car accident on her way to the shops. And he felt guilty because he reasoned that he could have prevented the accident because he didn't go that day. And he thought maybe he was a safer driver. And his grief further clouded his clarity of thought, confirming in his mind the belief that he was responsible for her death. And his depression set in. Now this man was in a deep hole, and it took him a long time to climb out. And it eventually took a car accident of his own, caused by another driver who was not concentrating for him to reassess the validity of his feelings of guilt over his wife's accident, and realize that there were many situations where he was not responsible for other people's actions. Which reminds me of a story about a teenage boy who was almost 20 and who was told in no uncertain terms by his mother that there were certain friends that he was forbidden to see because she didn't like them, and the thought of him with them made her very upset, which she said made the rest of the family upset. And at first the boy felt a bit guilty about doing something that would upset his mother. But after he calmed down and thought it through, he told her firmly but politely that she was welcome to make suggestions about his choice of friends, and even give her reasons. But ultimately it was his choice, and it was not his responsibility how she chose to feel about it. And that reminds me of a story about a highly successful professional couple who expected their son to follow in their footsteps and become at least a lawyer or a doctor. But the boy wanted to be a journalist, and he felt burdened by the expectations of his parents, and felt he was letting them down, until it dawned on him that what he did with his life was his decision, not his parents', and he was in control of his own destiny. Which reminds me of a story about a woman who was having trouble feeling happy because her partner didn't share her hobbies and passions, until someone suggested to her that she look for any common interests that they may have. And she then discovered that they both enjoyed going for drives in the country, and walking the dog, and entertaining friends. And she found that she could control her own feelings and no longer feel lonely, doing things that she and her partner both enjoyed doing. And that reminds me of a story about a wise old man who gave a much younger man some advice on how to do something he was having trouble with. Unfortunately, the young man took the advice the wrong way and was quite offended, an emotion which quickly turned to rage, and he was about to punch the old man, until the old man asked him which hand he was going to hit him with. The emotional side of the young man's brain was put on hold, and he calmed down as he tried to logically consider the question before deciding that using neither hand was the best response. And there's another story about a man calling his barking dog in at night. The dog would not calm down, and was so busy chasing possums he scarcely heard his master. So the man went outside and joined his dog, and they both barked at the possums for a while. They were soon on the same wavelength, and after a while the previously uncooperative dog was happy to follow his master inside. And that reminds me of a story about a girl who had bulimia and stubbornly believed that she could not be cured. She went to a therapist who agreed with her when he said, "Sorry, I can't cure bulimia. The challenge is just too much. However, we can definitely do something about the binge eating and the purging if you commit to not giving up." And she used her natural stubbornness to do that. Which reminds me of a story about a boy who lived on a farm. And one day he was watching as his father and older brother were unsuccessfully trying to get a stubborn mule out of the shed, one pushing at the back, one pulling at the front. And the boy said, "Give me a go." The others needed a break, so they sat down bemusedly to watch the much weaker of the three attempt to achieve what they couldn't. But the boy was smarter than they thought. He could see the stubborn mule wanted to resist going anywhere, so he pretended to drag the mule further back into the shed by his tail, and the much stronger mule easily resisted him and dragged the boy all the way out of the front door of the shed. And that reminds me of a story about a man who was locked in a jail with 2 doors out. One door led to certain death, and one door led to freedom. And there were 2 guards, one who always told the truth, and one who always lied. The man was free to go through either door, but once chosen, he could not change. The challenge was that he didn't know which door was which, and he didn't know which guard was which. The head warder told the man to choose only one guard, and to give that guard only one question. The man thought about his dilemma for a while, and remained calm as he put himself in the minds of the guards. And he then asked one of the guards, "What would the other guard say if I asked him which door led to freedom?" The guard told him, and the man selected the other door, which was obviously the correct one. Which reminds me of a story about a small boy who broke his arm falling off his bicycle. He looked at the strange angle between the 2 different parts of what was normally straight, and immediately had a panic attack. He was screaming in pain and totally incoherent when his father arrived to see what all the fuss was about. His father was a doctor and quickly summed up the situation. The priority was to calm his son down. Counterintuitively, he asked his son where it hurt. That got the boy's attention, and he showed his father the spot. His father then told him again and again, "It really, really hurts. It really, really hurts," which gave the boy confidence. His father knew what was going on and what he was feeling. His father told him it would continue to hurt, but that slowly the pain would subside and gradually go away, and in due course his arm would be set in plaster, heal, and then be as good as new. All of which everyone knows is true, but it is the sort of thing a person with a broken arm or having a panic attack needs to hear and believe. And a lesson once learnt can be a valuable life skill that can be used to calm oneself down. And that reminds me of a story about a young American native Indian girl who was resentful and depressed because her parents were always away hunting so they could feed her. So she complained to her grandfather that this was causing her to get stomach pains. He told her, "I have 2 wolves fighting in my stomach, one called resentment and one called gratefulness. Which will win?" she asked. "The one I feed the most," he answered. And that reminds me of a story about a boy who asked his father to let him fall when he playfully tossed him in the air. That didn't go well, and he quickly learned to think before he spoke. But he also learned to think before he acted, and he now knew that falling from a height is dangerous. 2 lessons in one that stood him in good stead a few years later, when he sat on the roof of the family garage with an umbrella for a parachute, contemplating what it would be like floating to the ground, and then deciding it wasn't such a good idea. And that reminds me of a story about former President of USA, Abraham Lincoln, who was famous for his diplomacy, separating his emotions and thinking before he acted. One of his generals was doing a particularly poor job at the war front, and so President Lincoln wrote a scathing letter to the unfortunate general, pointing out his numerous failings and how this had cost the lives of many troops and set the war effort back significantly. After his death, his staff were going through his desk and found the letter in a bottom drawer, unposted. Clearly he knew that the general was already well aware of the mistakes he had made, and the president was the sort of person that was more interested in focusing on people's positive attributes. And that reminds me of another story about a teenage girl who was going through some rough times. Her boyfriend had dumped her, and the few close friends she had turned on her. The sort of thing that happens to all teenagers on occasions. But she didn't see it that way and became depressed until she met an old man in a wheelchair. The man was paralyzed with polio and could barely speak. Yet he was still working as a counselor and clearly enjoying being productive and helping other people. And she thought about all the things she had, and the even greater list of things she could still do. And she thought to herself, what have I got to be depressed about? And was grateful for all those things. And gratefulness is the state of receivership and healing. And you can believe that it is true that you can heal your relationships and your life when you carefully apply all the skills and abilities that you already had and those that you have acquired or taught yourself and those that you are currently processing and absorbing. And when you believe in yourself and you believe in your abilities, that's when wonderful things can happen. And now, I invite you to think carefully about what you would like to achieve, and imagine what it will feel like to achieve that. How wonderful that will be. You deserve that. There is no reason why you can't achieve what you want. And give yourself permission, because you already have the permission of others, and you can expect that you can achieve what you want. And once again, imagine what it will feel like to achieve what you want, how wonderful that will be. And now put that in the back of your mind, and at the same time, as you continue to do that, take some time to absorb and digest anything useful you have heard today or any time in the past, whether consciously or unconsciously. Take a deep breath and relax and allow your mind to do what it does best. Now, some people behave habitually in an emotional way in certain situations, like when confronted, or when corrected or criticized, or admonished, or when lectured to, or patronized, or even when offered unsolicited advice, or when other people become emotional, or when someone presses their buttons, and especially when abused, lied to, lied about, taken advantage of, or violated in some way or other. And the challenge for these people is to rise above these habitual behavioural tendencies, which could have been learnt in a variety of ways, and perhaps once could have even had a useful purpose. Like a screaming baby with colic, needing help from a parent. But now these habits are no longer useful. In fact, they are holding us back from developing and maintaining healthy relationships, and holding us back in our personal growth, and in our ability to be healthy and happy, and to make those around us feel comfortable and happy. And that reminds me of a story about a woman who was abused by an older relative when she was very young. And this left her with feelings of guilt and hate that did not diminish with time. So she finally sought advice from a trauma therapist, who asked her, as her stronger and wiser older self, to go back in time and visualize standing up to her abuser, rejecting his unwanted attentions, and then punishing him in any way she saw fit. So she did that, but was still not completely satisfied. So the therapist suggested making him pay the ultimate price for ruining her life, and perhaps visualize ending his life several times over in various gory ways. She contemplated this idea for a few moments and then said, "You know what? I'll pass on that idea. I've decided I'd rather forgive him for what he did. And now I feel a lot better." So how can someone change the way they instinctively react to situations or feel about them? Should they tell others to stop doing or saying things that upset them? Or should they just avoid all confronting situations? Or should they ditch their so-called friends and start again in hopes that these new friends will somehow be better than the last lot? Or should they decide to not judge their friends because true friends are non-judgmental? Or should they take some responsibility for changing their own behaviour, as difficult as that may seem? Perhaps by making a list of things they do or say that triggers an emotional reaction in others, or another list of what other people do or say that gives them an emotional reaction, and then calmly planning and rehearsing how they will calmly behave in these situations, and then resolving to put their plans into action, and do this repeatedly, and develop a new and better way, a calmer way, and a friendlier way of habitually interacting with others, including others who are behaving emotionally. And some examples of how someone may plan to be more considerate and more calm could be to replace "don't say that" with "can you tell me why you say that?" Or "you should be more respectful" with "may I offer you a suggestion?" Or "you've got the completely wrong idea" with "maybe you could look at it differently." Or "you're wrong" with "I guess that's one way to look at it." Or "how about cleaning up that mess you leave everywhere?" with "there's a ton of cleaning up, and we all agreed it's only fair that everyone needs to help. Could you put your own dirty plates in the dishwasher, please?" Or "you always get so emotional when I say stuff" with "can you tell me why you feel that way?" Or "your political or religious views suck" with "maybe we're both right." Or "you always criticize me" with respect, what's the logic behind that?" Or "don't try to teach me how to think" with "thanks, I didn't realize that." Or "I'm going to do it anyway, so bad luck" with "look, I really want to do this." or replace "calm down" with a much more subtle response like, "I'm a bit stressed at the moment. Can we talk about this later when I'm in a better frame of mind?" Or a parent could replace, "You're getting too emotional," or "You're not making sense," with, "You seem a bit upset. Let's take a break and we can talk about this later." Now, you cannot change how other people think, feel, and act if they don't want to change. But you can change how you think, feel, and act if you want change, and create an atmosphere where other people can see you differently if they choose to do that, and change how they feel about you and how they act towards you. Now, when you compose some prose, or do something else that you may love doing and are very good at, what is it about that that makes it so enjoyable, that makes you feel calm and centered, confident and proud of yourself, and puts you in a congenial mood and in harmony with the world, and gives you a strong desire to learn even more, become even better, and be open to advice, and able to reframe so-called mistakes as opportunities to learn and grow? And as you take a deep breath and think about that, and notice how good you feel, isn't it amazing that you can be in two places at the same time, any time you want to, or any time you need to? And some coach can teach you to do some other amazing skill perfectly, and you can love what you can now do, and learning even more. And life is like that. And you know what the qualities of a perfect person are: calmness, courtesy, respect, compassion, empathy, open-mindedness, fairness, and a strong willingness to grow and contribute to the happiness of others. And you can strive for those qualities under the guidance of a life coach, or you can make a commitment to develop them yourself. You can be your own coach and commit to exhibiting these qualities and traits whenever you get the opportunity. And as you have already learnt, perfect practice makes a perfect practitioner, or practice makes perfect. And as you master these skills, one by one, and then perform them automatically, you can enjoy putting them into practice in every aspect of your life, automatically, instinctively, because life is not a dress rehearsal, and you can, and you deserve to enjoy every aspect of your life. Now, if in the past the skills needed to handle the challenges of difficult relationships have been missing, it could have felt like you were a prisoner in a jail, and you knew there was a way out, but you couldn't believe you could find it. And the thing is, you have done this before. You know how to learn new things by dedicated practice and repetition. All you have to do is make a commitment and stick to it. Now, the sad thing is, having unhealthy relationships is depressing for most people, and can happen to anyone. And having depression that is more than transient is termed chronic, and inhibits healthy relationships for most people. And it doesn't really matter which came first. They still end up together. And by definition, chronic depression is something someone habitually feels and can manifest itself in the sometimes distorted or strained way that that person habitually thinks, feels, looks, speaks and acts, and sees the world around them, and in the way they interact with others, called their relationships. And you can see that there are so many things that someone with depression does habitually that can perpetuate their situation, that breaking these patterns seems an insurmountable task. But the good news is that all habits can be changed, and the adage, one day at a time, can be adapted to one thing at a time, and step by step, using the life skills you already have, setting goals, making a commitment to achieve them, and applying yourself doggedly, you can expect that you can and will begin the process of breaking many of the patterns of depression that is dependent on the correct and habitual application of the life skills you already have. And when it comes to life skills, an issue that people need to consider is that there are two things that can impede them. What you know that isn't so, and what you don't know that you should. Now, overcoming these important impediments requires an open-minded attitude to considering beliefs contrary to your own, and having a thirst for knowledge tempered by a balanced critical judgment. All achievable on your own, yet dependent on a consideration of the views and knowledge of others. Or you can seek out a mentor to guide you through this process and speed you towards achieving your goals. And you could decide to set yourself a set of goals, together with timelines, perhaps goals like some of the following. Expect to improve your health and relationships. Recognize and avoid any poor or incorrect patterns of thinking by comparing yourself to society norms or by listening carefully to sage advice. Explore your belief systems to correct any flaws you may find that are causing issues or depression. A common flawed belief that people must always put others before themselves can lead to self-deprivation. Extreme views are always dangerous and should be reassessed wherever present. Accept that life is ambiguous and create a meaning that works for you and that is congruous with harmony in all aspects of your life. Routinely review the validity of what and how you think. Reject being burdened by the expectations of others. Speak and act responsibly towards others, but do not feel responsible for what others think, feel or do, and eliminate any feelings of guilt about your words or actions. Decide to only control what you can and avoid feeling a victim. Carefully and thoughtfully set the boundaries of what you are responsible for and what you are not responsible for, and avoid being manipulated. And sometimes not having a clear understanding of what you are and are not responsible for can lead to misunderstanding and even misinterpretation of motives during interactions with other people. Perhaps when someone asks you to do something or behave a certain way, when you mistakenly believe it is not your responsibility, when it is, and you feel you are being treated unfairly and react angrily, or when you believe it is your responsibility when it is not, and then you find that people take advantage of you and overload you with unreasonable things to do and ways to behave, and stress you out, and perhaps in frustration even vent your anger by making cutting and sarcastic remarks, which are strongly condemned and criticized, and that makes you feel even worse. And so something so seemingly unimportant as not knowing the boundaries of your responsibilities is only one of many, many potential things that can cause a feeling of depression or exacerbate it. And as you can see from the example of boundaries, it is hard for people to work out their own optimum set of personal development goals because you don't know what you don't know. No one does. And people need to do some open-minded research, reading, listening to sage advice, and plenty of genuine self-reflection. Now, if you want to work out a set of relevant personal development goals, or tools that will speed up the job of achieving the healing outcomes you want, you need to identify what tools you need to apply from the set you already have, and identify what tools you need to acquire, and take full responsibility for this project, and use every resource you can find, and be your own project manager, and fully commit to see the project through to successful completion. And once you develop these new skills that you feel are missing and practice them regularly, you can maintain their effectiveness and use them to help you in breaking the patterns of depression and go a long way in helping you heal and repair your relationships. And you could motivate yourself. You could wonder how wonderful it will be when you achieve your goal. Or you could reflect on how so many hundreds or even thousands of hours of same old is unacceptable. And working smart instead of hard, stubbornly commit to spending 1 or 2 hours every day for a week or two, or 1 or 2 hours every week for a couple of months, working on and implementing a tailor-made plan for your specific personal development needs, and look forward to enjoying the journey and the benefits, and be proud of what you have already achieved and what you will achieve. Now, sometimes, to see the world differently, the achievement of that objective can be facilitated by a circuit breaker that can break the patterns of our negative thinking, or faulty assumptions or beliefs, or of our depression, or feeling of low self-worth, or low self-confidence, or anger because we believe, rightly or wrongly, that someone is trying to push us around or force an opinion on us. And that reminds me of a story about a young engineer with low self-esteem who was lacking motivation and was transferred to a company policy review task force as part of the staff development program. He was given a junior partner and his own section of the program to work on, and tasked with the responsibility of making sure he and his partner prepare and present a concise report called Key Findings to the entire team each Friday morning. and he was praised for the skills he had shown in previous positions in the company, and encouraged to believe he would do an excellent job, and then told he would be given a new issue to work on each week, and asked to work out his own daily list of things he needed to do. And the young man was filled with self-confidence and responded to the challenge of his new position with enthusiasm, but still looked forward to his first Friday with trepidation, and felt depressed at the thought that his report would be boring or not up to standard. But when Friday arrived, he was amazed at the positive change in his mood when he arrived at the room the team all worked in. It looked like a setting for a presentation night at a sporting club. The boss had used his own money to provide a lavish spread. He was wearing an amusing coloured jacket and tie, and everyone looked very relaxed. And he addressed everyone and congratulated them for all their amazing work. And then, as he and each other member gave out copies of their reports and spoke to them, everyone gave a hearty round of applause. And the young man, in that setting, was filled with pride and transformed into a positive and confident person, which grew stronger week by week as he looked forward to each Friday more and more. And his enjoyable experience paved the way for taking those skills and abilities and applying them in other areas of his life. And sometimes life itself can teach us many of these skills if we are open to learning. And that reminds me of a story about a young man who wanted to be the state chess champion. He was an excellent chess player and had been his local club champion for several years. But one day he lost unexpectedly to the older and rather wily former club champion, who had distracted him by blowing smoke in his face. The young man was devastated, and although he was very good at chess, he was prone to focusing on negative thoughts and had a few flaws in his belief system. Like he felt he couldn't win unless he wore his lucky underpants, and that if he didn't win when he should, he was a loser and may as well retire. And the young man stormed out and swore he would never play chess again. The older man followed him, and when the young man had calmed down, explained to him that he did have enough talent to be state champion. He just needed to improve his concentration. Consider his last match as a positive learning experience, and remember that in this world you make your own luck. So forget about relying on your lucky underpants. Set some goals and stick to them. And the young man thanked the older man for his advice, and once again set himself the goal of becoming state champion, but this time to achieve that goal that same year. And he succeeded. Now, by their very nature, invalid beliefs are very difficult to detect in oneself, because people tend to believe that what they believe is true. Which reminds me of a young boy who believed that everyone was thinking bad thoughts about him, and that they all wished he was dead. He truly believed what he thought was right, and no logical explanations could sway him from his belief, until one day he got lost in the mountains, and 2 days later he was rescued by a huge search party, and he was lavished with attention and good wishes, and he realized that he should have a more open mind to what he did and didn't believe. Mark Twain once said, "I have experienced many terrible things in my life, some of which actually happened. And he also said, "Today is the tomorrow we worried about yesterday." Now, flawed thinking in a person can result in a cascading set of stressful and depressing situations for that person. And unfortunately, this is a problem where most people cannot see the cause, and therefore cannot see the solution. And flawed thinking can manifest itself in a multitude of ways, and can and does cause stress and anxiety in countless people. And we can all see the ubiquitous presence of flawed thinking in other people. But it is very difficult to see it in ourselves. And if we think about it, this is something we should be constantly looking for in our own thinking. Now, one of the most common forms of flawed thinking, even in people like scientists who are trained to avoid it, is the mistake of believing that correlation means causation. And of course the opposite is true. Correlation does not mean causation. A good researcher knows that when someone gets better after taking a trial drug, no matter how unexpected or dramatic, the two events may not necessarily be linked. However, most lay people quickly jump to what may turn out to be a wrong conclusion. And many people, including scientists, fall into the trap of unwittingly linking the correlation of two possibly unrelated events to validate, in their own minds, some other potentially flawed theory or opinion. And for scientists, this happens mostly in their private lives, but occasionally in their professional lives, evidenced by the number of so-called scientific discoveries that are rejected when the published findings are peer-reviewed. Now, someone can feel bad when their friends refuse to see them anymore, and believe it is because someone else has spread malicious gossip behind their back, when in fact the two concurrent events may simply be coincidental, or there may be some quite innocuous reason. Or it may be that the friends are feeling intimidated in the company of someone with a superior intelligence, who has unfortunately given the impression that they are putting on airs, or speaking down to them. And in this case the sad thing is that the person who feels spurned doesn't know the reason, and doesn't realize that it is wise to always talk at a level that is as down to earth, or as sophisticated as the other person, and take care to never unintentionally give the impression of acting superior. Or someone who feels rejected or depressed may believe that some people nearby are looking at them and laughing at them because they are ugly, whereas in fact they have not even noticed that person and are looking at something behind them and laughing at a joke one of them has just told. Or a girl could be certain that it must be her fault her boyfriend stopped calling because she didn't wear a skin-tight dress for the first time since they met, whereas in fact he may have been intimidated by her superior intelligence when they discussed some issue or other on their last date. Or a person could be suffering from low self-esteem and believe that when they have something important to do, they always mess up, or that they always fail under pressure, possibly because this has happened to them before, for whatever reason, and they now believe that for them, pressure and failure are correlated. And things may have many causes, and a true believer may use the argument to an agnostic friend that a tree they are sitting under is so beautiful that only a divine being could have created it, and believe that that conclusively proves the existence of God. whereas his agnostic friend can have a different view. So your beliefs, whether flawed or valid, can dramatically change how you see the world, and different beliefs can coexist harmoniously or clash. Either way, it is very important for people to believe in their own ability to become a better person. Now, life is ambiguous. The meaning or purpose of it is not obvious. Yet in order to feel good about themselves, most people have a need in their life to feel that they are doing something useful to help others or to make others happy. And poor self-image, whether physical, mental, or any other category, can lead to low self-esteem. And expressing an honest and sincere appreciation of what someone has said or done, and giving sincere compliments on how you see them, of their physical appearance, and how you feel about their personality, and their words and actions, can bring about change in how a person sees themselves. Now, some people fret about things that they have no control over, and even become depressed about things they can't change, but continue to search in vain for ways to do that, instead of focusing on the things that they can change, things that can make a difference to how they feel about whatever it is that is bothering them. Now, some people form strategies to avoid arguments, or to avoid creating emotional situations, or to diffuse emotional situations which are hopefully not of their making. Rehearse these in their heads, and then put them into practice. And calmness can be catching. And even though, normally, emotion trumps logic, when carefully planned and executed with self-discipline, logic can overcome emotion. And there are many subtle ways to indirectly give a suggestion without giving the impression that you are giving orders. And one way is to surround the suggestions with permissive language. For example, instead of saying, "Heal yourself," you could say, "There's an old saying that time heals all wounds, so perhaps you can heal yourself in time." Now, being respectful and non-judgmental is very important in healthy relationships, because when these traits are missing, it can easily trigger an adverse emotional reaction in others. And once again, it is important to look at one's own automatic behavior and create plans to develop these traits in all our relationships. But the good news is that if you have already mastered the first important lesson of staying calm whenever it's important to do so, then preparing and implementing your plans will be so much easier. And some examples of how someone may plan to be more respectful and non-judgmental could be to never say, "You're wrong," or to never criticize or condemn or complain. Or you could decide to replace things like, "He's an idiot," with, "He probably needs to think things through a bit more," or "He's arrogant," with, "He certainly is not short of confidence," and so on. And of course, humility is a trait that is much admired. And when someone is wrong, it is a very impressive thing to see them admit that with conviction. Now, there is a trap about belief systems that people should try to avoid, and that is to not make the common mistake of believing something with a closed mind, and then only looking for reasons why that belief could be justified. And there are about as many belief systems and subtle variations in the way of behaving as there are people on the planet. And some people think that they should lie rather than offend you. Some people think that they should tell the truth and risk offending you. And if you can accept someone for their belief system or their way of behaving, even though you may not agree with it, work with them. Even use their different views to inspire you. And you can still have a healthy relationship with that person. Now, when you find somebody who you truly respect as a human being, perhaps a wise old grandfather, or someone who truly believes in you, you'll most likely find that almost all the relationships they have are calm, respectful, and non-judgmental, clearly evidenced when they talk to you and when they talk about other people and the way they act. And if you want to develop these traits yourself, it could be very useful to spend as much time as you can in their company. Adopt this person as a mentor. Adopt their skills and make them your own. Become a more agreeable person and teach yourself to think and act like your mentor. Arriving at this destination is important and will take time, but even more important is what the journey teaches you. But on your way, you will most likely find that most people you know will have a tendency to reciprocate your behavior and treat you with increased courtesy and respect. People will give you more leniency when you misspeak, and your relationships will all become richer and healthier. Now, in order for a person to have robust and healthy relationships with family, friends, and all other groups of people they come into contact with, it goes without saying that it is a prerequisite that that person needs to be a decent human being as judged by society's norms, calm and open-minded, and not weighed down by emotional baggage, confident but not arrogant, happy with their lot in life, kind, considerate and respectful, always willing to grow as a person, always working on their own personal development, and without compromising their own happiness, always looking to help others be happy and achieve their goals at every opportunity. Simply put, always courteous to others and working hard to become a person who is a joy to know and be with. Now, in a young family, if the responsibility of the older generation is to provide thoughtful, sage, kind and considerate advice and assistance in developing the essential life skills of the younger generation, and if the responsibility of the younger generation is to listen thoughtfully and respectfully and make all fair and reasonable efforts to develop the essential life skills that will form the foundation of all current and future healthy relationships, then what part can you play in helping to make this intergenerational relationship harmonious and fruitful? Now, being stubborn can have an adverse effect on any relationship if you allow that trait to have a free rein. And so, many people see stubbornness as a negative quality. But why not take control of it and see it as a useful tool to help you achieve your goals? When you make up your mind to achieve an important goal, for example, to become a good listener, keep going until you achieve your goal and never be deterred by setbacks. And when a goal or a challenge seems too enormous to possibly overcome, or perhaps contain far too many component issues to overcome. Suspend your disbelief and remember that the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. Break up your so-called big problem into little pieces and then work out which to get your teeth into first. Now, in order to become a good listener, a lot of effort needs to be applied, and you need to listen not only to what is said and how it is said and the context, but also what is not said. And listen with your head and with your heart. And one of the benefits of becoming a good listener is that you will develop healthier relationships, as well as that very important life skill called emotional intelligence that will draw people to you and hopefully make you someone that people want to be with. Now you can consider the question, when was the last time you felt something bothersome? And as you continue to think about that, perhaps you can wonder where in your body you were holding your tension at that time. And as you continue to do that, perhaps you can consider a different question. What would you like to be doing right now? And you can take a breath, let it out, and go into a state of relaxation. Or you can let go of all your tension and watch it float out of your body and into space and time. And of course, your body does not know the difference between what is real and what is imagined, or your mind does not know the difference between muscle tension and muscle memory. And you might like to imagine you are in a beautiful house, a magical place that represents your body, that you can go into. And as you open the front door and enter a beautiful entry room or foyer, you can see thousands of beautiful healing-coloured crystals hanging down and floating in the air around you, transferring amazing healing energy to you and giving you all the energy you need to heal yourself, completely heal yourself. And as you enter your wonderful healing foyer, you can see doors leading to rooms, and one door has your name on it, a magical door that represents the door to your mind. And you turn the key and unlock the door into a peaceful place, and you feel a transition into comfort and calmness, and find yourself floating free, enjoying a wonderful feeling of comfort where nothing can bother you. And as the door gently closes behind you, you meet a person, a perfect person, who looks like you and has your name, and invites you to go into the beautiful, comfortable room. And your room has a wonderfully comfortable easy chair, and you sit down and make yourself comfortable, and you can see a beautiful picture window with wonderful views and shelves with hundreds of beautiful coloured bottles, the pharmacy of your mind, containing healing potions and medicines, beautifully labelled as remedies for every known ailment or addiction that you have ever had or may have, a potion or medicine for every known disease, for headaches, tension and pain, and any other malady. Incredibly safe and powerful, providing fast and powerful relief from discomfort or craving, and fast and effective life-changing healing that can be used every day or as many times a day as you like. And you can take your time and decide which ones you need today. And now you can let yourself go into an even deeper state of relaxation. Release even more tension from your body. And you can, when you make the decision to heal yourself and your relationships, believe that you have the skills, the knowledge, and the ability to do that. And you can do that anytime you want. And when you feel you need some time out, you can go to a favourite place where nothing bothers you, where you can do anything you like. And you can do anything you like in this place. And isn't it interesting how you can be here, in this place, and yet be there, in that favourite place? Now many people are carrying unhappy memories and thoughts that are weighing them down, leaving them feeling they are not normal, a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. But the good news is that they are normal, and this can be a great relief to know. And step by step, they can break up each memory into the external cause and the internal effect, into at least 2 bite-sized pieces. And the external cause of those previously unhappy memories or thoughts can be reframed as simply memories of facts that form the foundation of useful life lessons. And the former unpleasant emotions can be reframed as character building and useful lessons in the development of mature emotional intelligence. Now, if you like doing affirmations, here are some suggestions to help build or maintain healthy relationships, or to heal or repair existing ones. I can control my emotions and avoid arguments and criticizing others. I can control my emotions and avoid arguments and criticizing others. I can control my emotions and respect the opinion of other people. I can control my emotions and respect the opinion of other people. I can be patient and listen more to others. I can be patient and listen more to others. I can think of others more and look at things from their perspective. I can think of others more and look at things from their perspective. I can be more considerate and avoid causing others to lose face. I can be more considerate and avoid causing others to lose face. I can be more subtle and encouraging when suggesting better solutions. I can be more subtle and encouraging when suggesting better solutions. I can smile more and be more sympathetic when talking to others. I can smile more and be more sympathetic when talking to others. I can take more interest in the ideas, thoughts, and wishes of others. I can take more interest in the ideas, thoughts, and wishes of others. I can praise and give credit to others more often. I can praise and give credit to others more often. I can give more honest and sincere appreciation to others who help me. I can give more honest and sincere appreciation to others who help me. I can accept compliments and positive feedback graciously. I can accept compliments and positive feedback graciously. I can let go of negative thoughts, free my mind, and enjoy my life. I can let go of negative thoughts, free my mind, and enjoy my life. And now, you can go into a state of mind where you can identify all the skills you now have that you can use to fully heal and repair all past, present, and future relationships, and to have them permanently transfixed, and use these skills to create peace and harmony in your life.